If you ever notice your neighbor copying the way you live, down to the timing, down to the smallest habits, don't treat it like a weird coincidence. Don't joke about it. I did. And now I can't tell what parts of my life are actually mine. I rented the row house because it looked uncomplicated. 2 floors, small front yard, narrow driveway, a kitchen that had been updated in the way landlords describe things when they've replaced the cabinet handles and called it a renovation. The street was quiet, lined with similar houses that all tried to look unique, with different porch lights and paint colors. The kind of neighborhood where people collect recycling bins like trophies. The unit next to mine had been empty when I moved in. The for rent sign leaned crooked in the yard, and the blinds were always closed. For the first month, I didn't think about it. Then, on a Monday, I came home to find the sign gone. A moving truck was parked out front, engine off. No movers in sight. Just an open cargo door, like a mouth. I carried my groceries inside and tried to mind my own business. I didn't peer through windows. I didn't stand on my porch pretending to check my phone. Later that evening, I heard a series of sounds through the shared wall. Not loud, just distinct. A cupboard door, a kettle being set on a burner, the soft shush of running water. Normal house noises. I felt oddly relieved. At least the place wasn't haunted by emptiness anymore. The next day, I noticed their porch light was the same model as mine. Not similar, the exact same. A black metal fixture with a frosted glass box, one corner chipped. I had assumed mine was random, something the landlord bought in bulk, but seeing the same chipped corner made my stomach tighten. I looked closer. The chip was on the same side. I told myself it was mass-produced. A few days later, I saw their curtains. Same dull gray, same subtle vertical weave, hung at the same height. I remember thinking, they have the same taste. Then I noticed the timing. Every evening, I made tea at 8:40. It was a habit I'd developed during a stressful work project. I'd put the kettle on, wait for the click, pour water, stand at the counter, and stare at nothing while the steam rose. The first night after the neighbor moved in, I heard their kettle at 8:42. The second night, same. The third night, I decided to test it. At 8:30, I didn't make tea. I sat on the couch and watched the clock. At 8:40, I heard their kettle anyway. I waited. At 8:50, I got up and made my tea. As soon as my kettle clicked on, I heard theirs click on again, like they had restarted it. It sounded like an answer. I laughed, actually. A single, startled laugh, like it was a game, and I was in on it. That night, I went out to take the trash to the bins in the alley. The air smelled like wet leaves and distant car exhaust. Their back porch light was on, bright and steady. On their porch, right beside the door, was a doormat, same as mine. A plain brown mat with a faded pattern of squares, the kind you buy without thinking. I froze, trash bag in hand. I went back inside without taking the trash out. I started noticing other things. Small, stupid things that would be meaningless alone. On Wednesday morning, I sneezed 3 times in a row in my kitchen. Through the shared wall, I heard 3 soft sneezes spaced exactly the same. On Thursday, I played music while cooking, a low-volume playlist. 2 songs in, I heard the faintest ghost of the same melody next door, a fraction of a second behind mine, like a delayed mirror. On Friday, I dropped a fork. Next door, something metallic clinked on the floor at the same moment. I became careful without meaning to. I started moving more quietly, as if stealth could protect me from being copied. That was when the messages started. Not texts, not notes on the door, reflections. One evening, I caught a glimpse of myself in the front window as I walked past. The glass reflected the street, my porch, the neighbor's porch. And in the neighbor's window, behind their closed blinds, I saw a thin line of light, a slit, as if someone had pulled the blinds apart just enough to look out. I stopped walking. I stared. The slit didn't move. I couldn't see an eye. I couldn't see a face. Just the suggestion of watching. The next morning, their blinds were open for the first time. Not fully, halfway, like a compromise. And in the front room, visible through the glass, was a chair placed directly facing my house. A plain chair, wooden, positioned exactly so someone sitting in it would have a straight view of my living room window. I stared at it from my porch with my keys in hand, feeling ridiculous for being unsettled by furniture. It was just a chair, but it was a chair that had been placed with intention. I tried to meet the neighbor in a normal way, the way you're supposed to. A week later, I saw someone outside next door carrying a long cardboard box toward their door. I stepped onto my porch. "Hey," I called, putting on a friendly tone. "I'm next door. Just wanted to say hi." The person paused. They didn't turn fully, just angled their head slightly, as if listening. They wore a dark jacket with the hood up. Their hands were in gloves, even though it wasn't cold. "I'm Alex," I added, "because saying your name is the socially acceptable bridge." They didn't answer. They walked inside and closed the door with a soft, careful click. I stood on my porch, feeling like I'd spoken into a void. The air felt too still. That night, at 8:40, their kettle boiled. I didn't make tea. I sat on the couch and watched the neighbors' dark windows through the gap in my curtains. At 8:41, my phone buzzed, a notification from my calendar app. An event had been added. Tea, 8:40 p.m. I hadn't added it. I didn't even use that app for reminders. I opened it. The event was set to repeat daily. Location field, next door. I deleted it. My hands were sweating. At 8:42, another event appeared. Look up, 8:42 p.m. I didn't look up. At 8:43, another. Listen, 8:43 p.m. The hair on my arms lifted. Through the wall, I heard a soft scraping sound, like something being dragged gently across the floor, slowly, like someone positioning a chair. I got up and went to the kitchen. I stood with my back against the fridge and tried to breathe quietly. My phone buzzed again. "Don't be late." I turned the phone off. The next day, I checked my router logs. I'm not a tech expert, but I know enough to look for unfamiliar devices. There was one I didn't recognize, a device name that made my stomach drop because it was so plain. Mirror. It wasn't connected to my Wi-Fi. It was just visible, hovering in range, like it was nearby and listening. I called my internet provider. They told me there was no issue. I asked if someone could see my devices. They gave me the usual advice. Change passwords. Update firmware. Be cautious. Normal advice for an abnormal feeling. That evening, I changed every password I could think of. I covered my front window with a thicker curtain. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. At 8:40, my kettle boiled. I hadn't turned it on. I stood in my kitchen staring at the kettle on the stove as if it were a stranger. The indicator light was on. The water inside was heating. The cord was plugged in. I walked closer, slowly, and touched the handle. Warm. The click came at 8:41. The kettle shut off. Through the wall, At the exact same moment, I heard their kettle click off too, a synchronized exhale. I unplugged mine. My fingers shook so badly I almost missed the outlet. Then I heard, clearly, a sound from next door, a voice, not loud, muffled by drywall, but unmistakable. It was me. Not a recording from a speaker, at least it didn't sound like one. It sounded like my voice used naturally, with my rhythm, my slight hesitation before certain words. It said, softly, "Tea." Then, "Look up." Then, "Listen." Like someone reading the calendar entries out loud. I backed away from the shared wall until I hit the counter. I wanted to shout. I wanted to demand an explanation. I wanted to call someone, anyone, and have them hear it too. But I remembered something. The way the neighbor had refused to face me. The way the chair sat facing my window. The way the street felt too quiet, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. I didn't want to do anything that made me predictable, so I did something stupid. I went outside. I stepped onto my porch and looked directly at their front window. The blinds were half open. The chair was still there, no one in it. But on the wall behind the chair, visible in the dim light, there was something new. A clock. A large wall clock with black hands and a white face. It was set to 8:40, not moving, stopped. I stared until my eyes watered. Then, as I watched, the second hand twitched. Once, twice, and then it started moving again, smooth and steady, except it wasn't matching real time. It was matching me. I felt it in my body before I confirmed it. That sense you get when someone walks in step with you. I lifted my left hand. The second hand on the neighbor's clock jumped forward 1 second. I lowered my hand. It jumped again. I took a step back. It jumped. I took another. It jumped again. I stood there on my porch as the night air chilled my face, and I realized something that made my stomach hollow out. The neighbor's clock wasn't keeping time. It was keeping me. I went inside and locked the door. I checked the windows. I checked the back door. I checked the locks again, like repeating the action could make it stronger. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the lights off, listening through the shared wall. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knocking sound. Not on the wall, not on the door, on glass. Tap, 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 like fingernails against a window. My front window. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Tap, tap, tap. Then my phone, still off, buzzed once in my hand like a pulse. The screen lit by itself. A single notification. Open the curtain. I didn't. The tapping stopped. Silence settled, heavy. Then, through the wall, my voice again, gentle this time. "Don't make me come over." My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I had this sudden, vivid image of opening my front door and seeing myself standing there, hood up, gloves on, holding a long cardboard box. In the morning, I called my landlord and said I needed to end my lease early. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I just said I'd pay whatever fee. I packed fast. I didn't sort. I didn't label. I threw my life into boxes like I was trying to outrun a smell. On my last trip to the car, I noticed something that made me stop with a box in my arms. The neighbor's "For Rent" sign was back in their yard, leaning crooked, like it had never left. Their porch light was off. Their blinds were closed. The chair was gone. The house looked empty again. I stared at it until my arms ached from holding the box. Then my phone buzzed. A calendar event had been added. Move, today, location field, next door. And underneath in the notes section, one line, we'll keep it even.